Hey, before we jump in, if you like what you hear on the podcast, check out our free Substack newsletter, The Sober Friends Dispatch. It's a weekly dose of real talk, stories from the sober life, and a little extra support between episodes. Go to soberfriendspod.substack.com and subscribe. That's soberfriendspod.substack.com. All right, let's get into the show.
No amount of alcohol is good for you, right? Alcohol is poison, and we put it into our body, and the body has to deal with it. The reason why we do that is because we get a pretty good feeling, right? Once you get a couple of drinks in you, for most of us, it feels good. So, but today we realize that none of that stuff, a glass of red wine is good for you. None of that is true anymore. Research has done it. I've talked about it, and I just know that I have kids in their 30s, and both of them do a lot of, first of all, neither one of them are alcoholic, and both of them do a lot of sobriety thinking. Well, I'm not going to do, we're not going to drink, we're going to have, non-alcoholic drinks or whatever. They're very much aware of alcohol use in their lives.
So do you really need to lose it all to get sober? You need to end up in jail, rehab, or a hospital bed first? Well, this episode is for anybody wondering, are things bad enough? I think, Steve, that if you're asking that question, they might already be bad enough. I know my wife doesn't go around because she doesn't drink saying, I don't drink. I haven't had a glass of wine in about 8 months. Are things really that bad?
Right. Good morning, Matt.
Good morning.
It's a lot of those things. We do talk about it. If you're starting to ask the question whether you have an issue with alcohol, you probably have an issue. Whether you're a full-blown alcoholic, I don't know, right? You get to make that determination yourself, maybe with the help of others. But if you're asking the question, then that sounds to me like alcohol is somehow interfering with your life. And to me, that's a description of a problem with alcohol. And again, everybody gets their own interpretation of what that looks like in their life. I know what it looks like in my life. I've heard enough of your story to understand what it looks like in your life, but and it looks different for everyone. So I know plenty of people who have ended up close, and I mean this, close to death before they were able to accept this program. I wasn't that way. And it doesn't mean I couldn't get there or I still can't get there. That wasn't the way it worked for me. I never went to detox. I never went to rehab. I never went to the hospital for my drinking. So how bad could it be? Well, it was pretty bad for me. You know what I'm saying? So we all have that level of where it is and how it's impacting our lives. But no, we don't have to be on a park bench with a paper bag or sleeping in a cardboard box or over a steam grate in New York City to think that, now we need help. Matter of fact, it's better that we come in when we don't need that help.
Absolutely.
I tell people all the time. We were just talking about one of the young guys who was with us a while back and seems to be back out there in the wind. And I was so pleased. I think he was 22 years old, and it was young. And if you can hang on to this program at 22, and he acknowledged that he had a problem. If you can hang on to this program and start changing your life at 22, man, you have a great start. You have a great start. Yeah. But it's hard. It's hard. It's a difficult disease. Any addiction is difficult to deal with. So, some of us do have to really hit rock bottom or go to jail, like one of the things you mentioned. Do you have to go to jail? I say to people all the time, lots of people got sober in jail. Lots of people who come to my men's meeting, not lots of people, but a significant portion started this sobriety journey in jail. And now they're out doing great and haven't made a change in their life. So it's a great topic. And the last thing I'll say is that there's a lot of, you and I both do a lot of social media. Me consuming, you do a little bit more posting and stuff. I just consume it more or less. But there's a lot out there about AA and people bashing AA these days. And this is one of the things, right? Some people feel like you come in and you know, especially back in the day, the old timers would say, I spilled more than you drank. You know, that kind of judgment, which I don't see as much today as I have in the past. But it is one of those things that some people can be turned off by when they come to the rooms.
You're a real crumb bum.
Right.
That's
Exactly.
Right. That guy,
exactly.
Yeah, it's really counterproductive. I am working through Molly Jong-Fast's book, How to Lose Your Mother. And her mother is Erica Jong, who wrote the book Fear of Flying. And her mother never quit drinking. She has dementia now. So it's twofold. It's a story about how her mom's alcoholism growing up and then dementia, and then her husband getting the Steve Jobs version of pancreatic cancer and able to beat it, and the bad time that she went through. But she got sober at 18. She had a very quick and intense period of alcoholism, got sober at 18, and she's in her 40s now and has stayed sober and has been very open about AA being part of her life. And that juxtaposition of you can be early and you don't have to lose it all to get sober. With her mom, even though had a roof over her head, even though had money, wasn't very functional in life. So I think the whole idea of what a bottom is needs to change a little bit. Your bottom is the thing that tells you, I can't do this anymore. But the bottom doesn't have to be, I have to wait until I'm homeless. And if I'm not homeless, then I don't have a problem. I never got homeless. My bottom was just that sinking realization this really was a problem. This was going to get worse. This has to stop. And realizing in a moment, that moment of clarity, that there are things I could lose and have much more pain than I have now. I need to change this. And I did. Life's not perfect, but I have the tools to get through it.
Right. And that's it. Like I said, that pain point is different for all of us, right? And a lot of that comes through environment and stuff like that. I talk about, and you talk about it too, we both grew up in dysfunctional families, alcohol being part of it. So a lot of that for me was that alcohol was so prevalent, is that I knew I sort of had a problem with drinking too much alcohol, but the fact that it was always around me and everybody that I knew, everybody, at least in my mind, that I knew and saw drank like I drank, it was hard for me to determine when enough was enough for me. And I just think in a different place. I think back to my 20s. And again, I don't regret this. I don't walk around like, oh, I wish I did this. I don't. But I realize today, like I look back at my early 20s when I had an opportunity to probably stop before I became a full-blown alcoholic. Like before it became problematic and really started impacting. I had those opportunities. But it didn't occur to me at the time that I was alcoholic. You know, I really didn't. I knew that at times I drank too much and at times I was behaving irresponsibly. But I didn't really think. And again, part of that was because I lived with an alcoholic mother and I had a drug-addicted alcoholic brother who lived outside in a tent. So it was easy to compare me, this kid, the golden child who was the one who's going to succeed in life. Doing okay, keeping a job, moving out of my house when I was 19, never going back home, like in my own apartment, like alone, like doing those type of things and convincing myself that I was okay. And that was my problem. I convinced myself that I was okay until I wasn't, and I had no choice to surrender, right? Just like you had a point and you hit that point and I hit that point where, and for me, the first time it happened, it was an intervention. So it was, people pointing out to me that I had a problem, but I also realized it and then took steps to try to remedy the situation. Took a while for me to do that. I've told my story here before, but eventually I got it. And one of the things I say all the time to new people, I was 52 years old when I really got it. Like when I really got it, I was 52. I was actually older than that because that's when I came back into the program. I was probably 55 by the time I really got it. And you don't have to be 52 or 55 to get it. You can be 22. You can be 22.
Yes.
We have a guy coming in right now, a young kid who's been coming around into our Friday night meeting, 18 years old. And he sounds great. And I hope that he keeps coming, and he's, we'll see. But I look at that kid and I see the promise of his life, that what he could have if he doesn't let alcohol drag him down.
That would be so motivating to me, to see an 18-year-old. If you're an 18-year-old, you're listening to this and thinking of quitting, and you go to a meeting, I would love that. Mm-hmm. I love seeing people who get it young, because I wish I did. Too. You don't have to have that as an excuse that I haven't hit the age of 40 or 50 or 60, and that's when alcoholics stop drinking. Right. You don't have to wait. You can do this in your teens, in your 20s, in your 30s. That's okay. The health benefits from doing that are incredible, but it also opens up sort of that funnel of possibilities later on, that because you got sober now, the things that could happen that are going to be great for you are going to open up. That window will not open up if you continue drinking. You will not have those possibilities that you do if you stop.
And I think those are the things I think about, right? I think about the wasted years. And again, there's no guarantees in life, right? And that's why I don't go back and I say, oh, this would have happened if I had stopped drinking. I know that that's not true. I have no clue. But I do know that there would have been some opportunities that I would have looked at differently, right? And I do look at, there was some, I talk about my first divorce. I was 6 years into my first stint of stopping drinking. I thought I was sober at the time, but I really wasn't, because I hadn't really addressed my alcoholism. I just addressed my drinking of alcohol. And I got divorced from my wife for no really good reason. And I don't know how that, I've always said, I don't know how that would have ended up in the future, but I know financially it set me back 20 years, right? I mean, financially it did. Yep. It set me back. And I think about that, just that piece of it. Like, if I had stayed married to my first wife, and this has no reflection on how I feel about my current, my wife now or anything like that, but if I had, just from a financial standpoint, my life would have been totally different. My life would have been totally different. So I think about those opportunities, and then I would have had different opportunities in my career because I would have been more settled, and I would have been able to take more risks because I was in my wife worked, my first wife worked her whole life. And so there would have been different opportunities for me. And I see that today in hindsight, that the drinking clouded those opportunities and actually stopped me on some of them. They actually stopped me. So again, I don't know. I don't predict the future. Even can't go back and live it. But I do think that my life would have been different if I had figured this out early. And again, I'm grateful that I have this program today. I'm so grateful that I have it today. I'm so grateful that I have the peace and serenity that I have, which is really what I want today, more than anything else. And like I said, it took me what it took me to get here, and that was a lot of pain and suffering for me, and the people around me. I just want to put that out there, right? There was pain and suffering for everybody around me until I figured this out. So again, like you said, if you're out there listening to this and you're wondering, you can think about yourself and what's going on, but also think about the people around you, the people who care about you, the people who love you, that you may not think it, but there's pain and suffering with them too, not just with you.
Absolutely. That's the thing that gets missed, is you have people who are around you who are suffering and maybe covering for your addiction. If you decide to stop, you're giving other people a chance at a better life. That's easy not to think about, or you probably don't think about it at all, because addiction is a selfish disease. Mm-hmm. It's not that you're a bad person. There are bad alcoholics, but there's a lot that is good in you. But the addiction and the drinking closes your focus. It gets rid of your peripheral vision, where you have only tunnel vision and you can only see what's in front of you. You can't see the destruction to the side. So you're not going to pick up on that. Well, it's not really affecting things. I don't have to quit. You just don't see the destruction. And sometimes what you consider to be a high bottom isn't so high with clarity.
Oh, I talk about my bottom all the time. I say this all the time I mean, like, if you look at where I was in life, maybe not the first time, but even the first time, not too bad. Like, again, I had a job. I owned a home. I had 2 cars. I had 2 kids. Life was okay. I always say, if you want to know what my bottom looked like, don't ask me. Don't ask me. Ask the 2 women who I was married to at the time that I had to go for help. They have a very different perspective of what my bottom looked like than what I do, right? They lived with me, especially my first wife. She put up with all of the really, really bad alcohol. And not that my second wife didn't either, because she did also. It was just different. But both of it was like, it was really painful. And then I don't know. My kids may have blocked it out due to PTSD. I mean that honestly, because I would say you can ask my kids too. But they were pretty young. But they've seen some of the behavior. They've seen how I was, and I also think they see how I am today. So there's a big difference, right? And but listen, I get it today. Lots of pain, lots of suffering, lots of just not caring, right? I mean, that's the other thing. We think that not caring is not a big deal, but not paying attention, to what was going on, not paying attention to what's going on in other people's lives, not checking in on family members when they're sick. I remember I wasn't doing that when I was active, right? I had a brother who went through cancer, and I remember him saying to me afterwards, like, you never really even called me during that time. And I thought about it. I'm like, no, I never did. I mean, I knew it. Once in a while I talked to him, and I figured, but it's just the way it was. But those are the things that you're able to do and go do amends and do all that kind of stuff for.
Oh, I have a family member like that. And it does explain their distance when things are going on with the family, because the person's drinking a lot.
Yeah.
You mentioned something earlier I wanted to touch upon. Something that can cause you to not want to quit because you don't think you have a problem. You start comparing yourself to the other people in your life who you see, those people are drinking a lot more than me. Here is kind of the sign that you might have a problem. You're surrounded by other drinkers, whether it be family. Now, you may not be, if you're not drinking, but people who have a problem tend to be surrounded by people who have a problem, even if you're not drinking. But if you're drinking and you're comparing others of, well, they're far worse than me, you might want to do a little inventory. It just happens to be the case that drinkers who have problems travel in flocks.
Yeah. Not only do we travel in flocks, I just know this from my perspective, and it's not unique to me because I hear it by other alcoholics, and that's one of the things I love about the rooms, is that I hear these things and I realize they're not unique to me, is that I said it a little bit, and I'll say it again, is that I thought that when I was out with people that I knew, that people were drinking like I was drinking. And today I realize that they weren't, right? In my brain they were, because I would see them drink and maybe see them drink beer for beer, drink for drink, tequila shot for tequila shot with me for that day or that night or that hour or two. And I would think that when they left, they'd probably be doing the same thing I would be doing, which was going home and maybe, depending on the night, drink more. But they weren't. They weren't. And I know that today because I know these people, and they're not alcoholics, right? Like we were at, and this is my point, if I had stopped earlier, we were at the same point at some point in our lives where they were able to curtail it for some reason, but yet I continued to a place where it started to destroy my life. And that's the difference between me and other drinkers. But I couldn't see that when it was happening. So not only did I surround myself with drinkers, which I did, because that's what I wanted to do. If you were at a party and you were drinking, I was going, right? I mean, that's the whole point. Like, I was attracted to those people because I could drink with them. But I also had this mirage, not this fantasy, but this wrong picture of many people who drank, thinking that they drank like I did, and when they really didn't. And and that was another thing that kept me drinking a lot longer than I wish I did.
It did with me because I didn't drink as much as those people, at least in public. And I didn't do some of the sloppy things they were doing. Now, I wasn't being honest with myself on the things I was doing in private. That's the other problem is you have the tunnel vision, but then you're putting on a pair of, it's like you're putting on a pair of really strong reading glasses and using those for distance. You don't see all the flaws in yourself of all these things that you're doing that are sick. And that's the problem with the disease is we're going up against, you're having to make a diagnosis on yourself and you're not able to be truthful with yourself about what is reality. And that's the disease telling you it's not that bad.
Yeah.
You've got a lot of barriers between you and sobriety and your inability to be honest, not necessarily that you're consciously doing something wrong, but it's a case of you don't have the ability to be honest, so you can't see the facts to make a decision.
Right. You know, if you're listening to this, I mean, I think most people who probably listen to this podcast already know they have a problem, and they're listening to it as part of their recovery. But if you are stumbling upon, if you're sort of sober curious, as we like to call it these days, I mean, there's certain steps you could take out there to sort of gauge whether your problem, and there's plenty, again, in this world of having all this information at our fingertips, you can go figure out some of these things yourself just by Googling it. But the easiest thing to do is to stop drinking and then see how you feel. Right? I mean it.
Yes.
And I don't mean how you feel physically. If you stop drinking, you feel like shit physically, and you have a problem, right? Then you have a problem that may need some medical help. But I'm talking about mentally. I'm talking about what happens to your brain. Because like you said, my wife does not go around thinking, oh, I haven't had a glass of wine in 3 months. My wife has been, had some medical problems. She hasn't talked about, she hasn't said, something, I want a glass of wine, even though I'm sitting here trying to recover. Like I never stopped drinking whether I was sick or not. I always, and if I couldn't drink because I was physically ill, man, I was thinking about it. So I would always tell people to take a look at it, do some of those things, stop drinking for a while, see how you feel. And if you start to think like, oh, I miss it, again, that's where you talked about these lies that we tell ourselves. Oh, I miss it. I just want, that's what I would tell myself. I just want a couple drinks. That's what I would tell myself. I just want a couple drinks. I want that glow, but I never drank for a glow. I would drink for a glow, but I was never to do that. I drank until I was very drunk and many nights just passed out by the end of the night.
Mm-hmm. If you're asking the question, how am I going to get through a situation socially? Or how am I going to go to the ball game without a drink? That's a sign. Yeah. Because normal drinkers don't say that. How am I going to get through a hard day? I had a coworker who I told, I don't drink. And she said, well, how do you get through a hard day without a couple glasses of wine? And I'm like, ooh,
yeah.
This isn't a good question.
Yeah.
Normal people don't think that way.
No, some people think, hey, I wouldn't mind having a glass of wine to unwind or something like that. There's a different, or go to a ball game, have a couple beers. I get that. But those are the what the book has the thing. Those are the fantasies of normal folk, right? We're not normal folk. I'm not a normal folk, and I realized that today. And I think that's another thing that people get offended with as they're coming in, especially early sobriety. They don't want to be called abnormal, right? And they don't want to be like, ooh, I have a problem. I'm different than other people. So that's the other thing I think that keeps people out there for longer, because they don't want to admit ooh, I'm not normal. I'm not like my friends. I can't have this drink without repercussions, without consequences. So it's hard to admit that. It was hard for me to admit that. I really, I wanted so long to just be the guy. I wanted to be able to go out and party and have a good day and get buzzed.
Yep.
But, and again, this is that also included me driving home after that, right? So I think about it today, right? I'm like, oh, well, I'm just out having a good time. But then I would get behind the wheel, which would change the whole thing, right? Today, it's a little different. People can go out there and you can Uber. There's some other things. But at the time when I was drinking and during my formative years, even my adult formative years, if I went to a party and drank too much, I drove home. Right today, I realize how crazy and sick that is. But back then,
yeah, I did too.
But back then, it was just the way things went.
Yeah, we didn't have Uber. We just had all sixes out of Newington.
Right.
All sixes,
That's
baby.
Right. Yeah, they're still around somewhere, right? I still see them.
Oh, they're still around?
Yeah,
Oh,
I think
wow.
so.
Dial
All
666.
you need is 6.
666.
All you need is 6.
Yep. And you got it. Yeah. The book also, if you go to the big book, it talks about how we learned we had to fully concede our innermost selves that we were alcoholic. So the book kind of talks through the idea of reaching out to low bottom. If you read the book, you may not hear your story in the first 164 because Bill was trying to reach the real alcoholics. As time passed, that window opened to a broader spectrum of people. And I think that's a really good thing, that you don't have to wait until it's later, or you don't have to follow all of the other stories. Another thing that might hold you back is pop culture. The pop culture portrayal of alcoholics are rock bottom, jail, bad things happening. You don't see a movie with because a movie needs to have conflict to keep it interesting. You don't see the portrayal of an alcoholic who hasn't lost their job, their marriage, or their health. They're kind of bumbling along and then decide to get sober. It just doesn't happen. So there's not the role models out there that, unless you're in a recovery program, that you're going to see. But it is okay not to be like that.
I think today it's known out there. Again, things have changed so much, right? Just the research on, they don't even call it alcoholism anymore. They call it alcohol. I'm trying to think of it.
Alcohol use disorder.
Alcohol use disorder, exactly, right? And they do that, because there are different ranges of it, right? And I get it. Like, I believe there's probably a better description of it, and is we use alcohol improperly. But now we also know that, and again, you believe this or you don't believe it, it's up to you, that no amount of alcohol is good for you, right? Alcohol is poison, yes. And we put it into our body, and the body has to deal with it. The reason why we do that is because we get a pretty good feeling, right? Once you get a couple of drinks in you, for most of us, it feels good. So, but today we realize that none of that stuff, a glass of red wine is good for you. None of that is true anymore. Research has done it. I've talked about it. And I just know that I have kids in their 30s, and both of them do a lot of, first of all, neither one of them are alcoholic, and both of them do a lot of sobriety thinking. Oh, I'm not going to do, like, we're not going to drink. We're going to have, non-alcoholic drinks or whatever. Like, they're very much aware of alcohol use in their lives. And trust me, I'm incredibly grateful that at this point in their lives, that's the way they see it. And I hope that for them, they continue that way, right? Because, they've seen the damage that it did in their lives with me and their mom,
yeah,
and me and their stepmom, and all that kind of stuff, and me and them for a while, right? So hopefully they look at that and they don't. And I do know that both of them, if they had a problem, do know that they can come to me and talk to me about it, and know that I would help them and point them in the right direction, even though I wouldn't be the one helping them because I couldn't help them the way they could get help from other people.
My son, who is 17, pulled me aside, and he said, I've been to gatherings with my friends where there's been alcohol present. And people have come up to me and said, don't make that first drink be the one you have in college. And his response has been, who said that first drink is going to be in college? Who says I'm going to drink in college? Right. He is very militantly anti-alcohol and drugs because of me, but also because he is really focused on his health. If I were to show you pictures of him, this guy is so freaking chiseled, 6'3", can't keep weight on unless he's really just pumping away at weights and eating like crazy. 0% body fat. The kid's an Adonis. He is incredible. And he wants to be able to perform in volleyball in a way that he doesn't have defects. And he feels like if I'm going to get hungover or I'm going to have that sluggish feeling of alcohol, that's going to affect athletics.
Yeah.
I don't want that. I don't want that cloudiness. And he seems like if he's really telling me the truth, that he's got a head on his shoulders in such a way of, no, I don't need to drink, and I'm happy to be at this social gathering. Go ahead, yeah. But it's not for me. Well, that's great.
But that's the beauty of our time now, because he's a young kid, right? He's technologically savvy. He can go out and find all of this information on his own about alcohol not being good for his athletic, yes. Right? He can find that today. I couldn't find that as easily when I was 17. I mean, it wasn't out there. Number one, it wasn't considered that way, and number two, there was no way for me to find it, except maybe go to a library if I was looking up for some type of school report. So good for him. I hope he keeps that up. As we know, this disease is cunning, baffling, and powerful. Like I said, I just hope that my kids understand that for right now. Listen, their mom's not alcoholic, so I hope that that's where they get that from, and they're not carrying any of my again, I don't know. We talk about this in the rooms, whether it's genetic. A lot of people like to say, oh, it's genetic, and I couldn't really help myself, or I was predisposed to be an alcoholic. I have no clue. Predisposed, right? I have no clue of how that works for me. Yeah, I mean, I'm glad your son's not doing it. He's got something else. Both my kids have other stuff going on, and they seem to be pretty happy and pretty normal in that respect. And for them, I hope it continues.
My TikTok is really boring when it comes to my feed. I have really gotten into a lot of medical people, like cardiologists and stuff. And I will filter out the people who are saying things like, you got to take vitamin A and cod liver oil, shove it up your ass. And if you use that, you're not going to get any communicable diseases.
Right.
I wait for them to talk about evidence-based stuff. And a lot of the cardiologists that I follow say, don't drink booze. Mm-hmm. In my experience as a cardiologist or a medical professional, there are these things that I would recommend you don't do. One of them is don't drink alcohol, because it is the fastest way to destroy your system. Yeah. That's pretty consistent. Yeah. One of them I listened to, she left cardiology. And she said, and she was music to my ears, because she says a lot of the stuff. Now she goes, Diet Coke gets a bad name. If you're not doing any of this other stuff, don't feel guilty about having a Diet Coke. If that's the thing that you really, really need, do exercise, eat well. But if you need to have your Coke Zero, have your Coke Zero.
Hey.
And I'm like, oh, thank God. I needed permission. She's like, that's not the thing that's going to kill you.
I agree. Like, there's so many things out there that'll kill us that, and again, we don't have to be perfect with all aspects of our life, right? There has to have some joy in life. I'm not a Diet Coke fan. I am a Diet Dr. Pepper fan. That's my drink. And you go,
yeah, you and my daughter, we get along. She loves Dr. Pepper. It's
what's in my fridge. There was a time I thought, oh, this isn't good for me, and I decided I wasn't going to drink it. And then finally, at one point, I'm like, man, I really love it. And I don't drink a lot of it. Like, I don't even drink one a day, but there might be a day where I have 3 of them. And I just, like, when I want it, and it's like, yeah, just it's not gonna be the thing that kills me. And I have a fond saying of you got to die of something, right? If it's Dr. Pepper, if
Yeah.
it's Dr. Pepper that kills me, then so be it.
Yeah, because for me, it's not going to be
Yeah,
booze.
me neither.
All right, I'm going to wrap this up here by saying a couple of red flags I want you to think about if you got this long. Drinking alone or in secret. Regret after drinking. Planning your life around alcohol. Losing sleep, relationships, self-respect. Thinking about quitting but not following through. If you have any of these, it might be worth questioning your drinking and taking some time off and seeing what happens. It might be the sign of a problem. The thing worth thinking about is if it's ever determined you really don't have a problem, but you quit drinking, you still have lost nothing. If anything, it's still better for your health. You're going to think clearer. So if you really don't have a problem, you lose nothing and you won't get arrested because you decided to stop drinking. You probably won't get kicked out of a bar because you decided to stop drinking.
Probably not.
All right. I would love everybody to follow this podcast. If you have not, share it with a friend. Find us on social media. Everything is at Sober Friends Pod. Steve, have a great week ahead.
Hey, Matt, thanks.
We'll see everybody next week. Bye, everybody.